In this slide, I'll discuss the effects of global warming on this ecosystem, or community of interacting organisms, which in this case is the aquatic biome. Global warming is a universal term used to define the rise in Earth's average temperature. Although global warming has become one of the terms used to define the effects of human manipulation, global warming can be a normal instance that helps support the Earth. For example, it is shown in this picture through many relationships, the main one being the results of the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is the effect the sun has on the Earth and its atmosphere. At the biosphere, or the surface of the Earth, the atmosphere traps the sun's warmth. The radiation from the sun bounces between the atmosphere and the Earth, which warms the land and in turn influences the climate or the weather that occurs in different terrestrial biomes all over the world. We are seeing the effects of heat in the season called spring in this picture. The plants are beginning to grow, and the weather is clear with a whopping 49 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat also warms up the surface area of the ocean, or the photic zone. The photic zone is a part of the aquatic biome, which is also shown in the picture of Crystal Lake. Crystal Lake is an aquatic biome full of fish who are influenced by many other factors associated with global warming as humans connect it with. One of them being acid precipitation. Acid precipitation is influenced by two cycles, the water cycle and the nitrogen cycle. One of the water cycle stages is precipitation, which is when water rains back down from the clouds, which can be seen in the picture as well. This stage is where chemicals like nitrogen from the nitrogen cycle can mix in with the water. After the nitrogen goes into the atmosphere from emissions from factories or cow feces down the road. Although in small amounts this is a normal occurrence in the water cycle, too much nitrogen can result in acid rain, which drains into the lakes such as Crystal Lake. This can be dangerous because a shift in pH can lead to a shift in balance of life in the aquatic biome. Now, on this slide, I will discuss other connections to global warming, one of them being the carbon cycle. Take this youthful plant as well as dead tree, for example. These, as well as animals, emit carbon dioxide as a waste product, which goes through to the atmosphere before being inhaled by plants to conduct photosynthesis, which they use to create energy. The reason this cycle is connected to global warming, though, has partly to do with human population growth. As humans reproduce more and more and get closer to their carrying capacity, or maximum possible population, the more and more net primary production, or energy like carbon dioxide, that is produced. The more people breathing out carbon dioxide and the more factories being used to make products, such as that little pink flag in the top corner of the picture, the more carbon dioxide is being added to the atmosphere, which can blanket the atmosphere enough to make it so more heat is trapped on Earth, which is dangerous, because a change in heat means a change in climate, which can mean a change in environments, which can mean a threatening change to life living in those environments. This can then lead to forceful immigration and emigration of animals away from their habitats, or leaving and entering of a new area.
I'll be discussing the population, a group of organisms of one species that interbreed and live in the same place, affecting the environment and how the population can be affected by outside factors. Populations can grow exponentially, meaning the resources are unlimited, or logistically, which is when expansion decreases as resources become more scarce. The community in the woods consists of various deciduous trees, as well as deer, bird, and some smaller mammals, such as squirrels, whereas by the bay there are still deciduous trees and fish in the water, but less mammalian life, because there are less resources offered for them. Interspecific reactions vary between the wildlife. These squirrels and deer mainly feed off small shrubbery and trees, same as most birds in the wooded area, though some are larger and may eat small rodents. By the bay, fish feed off smaller fish or phytoplankton. The relationship seems to be a mutualism relationship in both ecosystems, where everyone is winning, seeming as there is not an unnaturally low amount of one animal versus the other, and the vegetation all seems to be thriving within the communities. So no niches or roles within the interactions in the ecological system have been overstimulated. The species diversity within the woodland ecosystem is very high because there is an abundance of foliage between grasses, trees, and bushes. The area is allopatrically speciated because there in a lower valley away from other wooded areas surrounded by industrialization. By the bay, there is less diversity because the area is not rich in animal life besides the fish, and humans have begun taking out some of their surrounding trees. This area is sympatrically speciated because human range has overlapped this pre-existing environment, so they occur together in at least some places. If there were to be an invasive species within the wooded area, it would be at an advantage because the new environment does not have any natural predators to threaten it. Therefore, an invasive species would harm pre-existing ecology. In the lake, there are some invasive species, such as Asian carp in our Great Lakes, which may have affected our bay's fish population, lowering it.
I'll be discussing the species interaction within a community under the grasslands ecosystem, which includes all biotic factors, or the living things such as plants and animals, in addition to the abiotic factors, such as water, climate, and soil. A food chain is a hierarchical series of organisms dependent on the next as a source of food. For example, grass is the primary producer and the foundation of the ecosystem. They provide carbohydrates for those higher up in the chain to survive. They use photosynthesis to grow, and they are very dependent on the environmental conditions. Next, in this specific example of the food chain, comes the grasshopper that consumes grass for his diet, which is shown in the bottom left corner. Ecologists use the term herbivory to refer to the interaction between an herbivore, in this case the grasshopper, eating parts of a plant. That would make the grasshopper the primary consumer. A secondary consumer in this predation would be a bird, while a tertiary consumer might be a snake that eats the bird. If an owl instead of the snake eats the bird, that would create another food chain, and many chains related to each other are called food webs. If there was a shortage of birds because of the migration or even because of deadly pathogens causing mortality in birds, then both the owls and the snakes would be in an interspecific competition to eat the bird. Many predators use mimicry to lure their prey. That is, they look to blend with the environment until their prey gets close. Some of them resemble twigs, bark, or leaves. Parasitism is another kind of relationship between organisms in which the parasite derives its nourishment from its host. It is seen in a forest ecosystem. An American cancer root is a parasite of oak trees. Another kind of close relationship between two organisms is called mutualism, where both organisms benefit from each other. Bees fly from one flower to another, gathering nectar with which they make their food. In return, flowers get pollinated and reproduce. Finally, commensalism is another interaction between two organisms that benefits one of the species but does not harm the other species. Birds that live in the hollow bodies of trees do not harm the trees, but they get the benefit of housing themselves within a tree. Certain species have a great impact on the structure of their communities. Dominant species are the most abundant and have the highest biomass. Keystone species are not abundant, however, they still exert strong control because of its ecological role. One good example in the upper Great Lakes region would be the wild rice.